And hi, welcome to 4 at 4 Forum. I'm Lisa Hutchins, and I'm sitting at the beautiful Hancock Park house of Yvonne Kazir.
Thank you.
Nice to see you, Yvonne.
It's wonderful to see you too, Lisa.
Tell me a little bit about your Hancock Park house.
Well, it's we've been here now 60 years, and I had two sons and a daughter grow up here, and it's really been a wonderful house because it's not overly big and it's not it's adequate. Let's put it that way.
And isn't there some interesting history as to past residents?
Well, that's right. Actually, I have met one of the daughters, and the other daughter lived next door, and they were daughters of I. Magnin, San Francisco women's shop.
Famous department store.
Absolutely.
Not here anymore,
No,
but much
unfat.
missed.
Unfat. It's true.
That's fascinating.
Yes. And she was very fascinated. I took her in the house, gave her a tour. So that was great fun. Yes.
There are a lot of stories in Hancock Park like that. But
Yes.
That's very interesting to hear that.
Oh my
Well,
goodness.
thank you
yes.
for having us here.
Oh, I'm delighted, and thank you for doing this. It's wonderful.
Of course.
And for Jane to do it.
Yes.
Absolutely. We have a lot of history here that I'm sure you're going to relate.
Yes. We're going to see it in the book that we're talking
That's right.
about.
Exactly. I have read it.
Yes.
And I'm sure you have too.
Oh, again and again.
Yeah. Right. Absolutely.
Well,
And
thank you.
You're very, very welcome. It's lovely to be here, and I'm delighted you decided to shoot it here.
Thank you, Yvonne.
Not at all.
Well, and now I think we'd like to introduce our guest, Jane Gilman.
Wonderful.
Jane is the former editor and co-publisher of the local Larchmont Chronicle, which is akin to the encyclopedia. It's fantastic, read from cover to cover by residents here and around the world.
Great.
Welcome, Jane.
Well, thank you, Lisa.
It's so nice to see you.
Well,
And here is your new book, and I'm so excited to present it. The Inside Hancock Park book just came out.
that's right.
So
Just-
tell me, what was the genesis for writing this?
Well, Lisa, as you mentioned, I'd been the co-publisher and then publisher and editor of the Larchmont Chronicle for 52 years. And so I did a lot of reporting, writing about Hancock Park. And also I had the luck to meet Alan Hancock's great-granddaughter. Her name is Jane Brennan. And she and I connected, and she gave me a lot of information and photographs. So I'm very indebted to her. And I just wanted people in the neighborhood, past residents, present residents, future residents, to know about their community and how spectacular it is.
Well, it is. I have to disclose that I was born and raised here too. So I'm partial,
Yes.
not an impartial interviewer. Tell me, how long did it take you to put all of this vast information together?
Well, it took me about 3 years or 4. It wasn't every day or every week, but when I got inspired, I did it. And took a lot of research, a lot of talking to people, getting permission, even the cover. The 10 houses on the cover, I needed to get permission from each of those homeowners to get that. And there were just a lot of work that had to be done and research, and the Los Angeles Library was a big help, and places like that.
Well, it's a slim volume. It's less than 100 pages. So it's a nice, easy read, but not
Yes.
really easy. I found that
Mhm.
I wanted to go back and
Mhm.
reconnect all the pieces. There's so many facts in here that are wonderful.
It is interesting. I found it fascinating that because people don't really know about Alan Hancock, and that was another reason that I wanted to do the book, was so that people would learn about who Alan Hancock was. I
You're
mean,
right.
the name Hancock is very significant.
I mean, many people have heard of Hancock Park, but they may not know the rich history behind Alan Hancock.
That's right.
Can you tell us a little in a nutshell without giving away too much of the book?
Mhm.
What
Yeah.
what facts you found so interesting about him?
Well, he was a railroad engineer. I mean, the man, after he developed Hancock Park, he went to Santa Maria, invested there, and bought the railroad. And he was an aviator. He knew how to fly, and he sponsored a trip to Australia with the Southern Cross with 2 pilots, the first trip ever from across the Pacific. And he was a developer, of course, a major philanthropist. I mean, he was so generous, and a musician, an incredible musician. And that he enjoyed it so much that he played at the Hollywood Bowl
It's
during the summer,
amazing.
and of course didn't ask for any salary. He donated his salary to the back to the Hollywood Bowl. Excuse me.
He was quite a Renaissance man. I mean, of many
Yes.
talents. He
Yes.
played the harmonica. He
Mhm.
played the cornet.
Mhm.
I mean,
That's right.
you don't think you think of him as
Mhm.
basically starting the tar pits, but it's a
Well,
lot more than that.
he really had an interesting childhood because he lived next to the tar pits, and his father died when he was 8, and he was the one that his mother depended on. His younger brother died at 16, so it was really just Alan and Ida, his mother, who carried on. Well, of course, it all helped that they discovered oil.
Right.
That had a lot to do with
They
it.
really struggled though pre
Yes.
1900.
Yes, in fact, you may remember reading the book that she took a shotgun out and threatened the squatters who were there illegally on her land. I mean, she was a pretty brave lady. And
Imagine that,
Yeah.
living alone
Mhm.
on thousands of acres. Your husband has passed away. You're left with
Yeah.
2 small children,
Mhm.
and they have not discovered oil yet.
That's right.
So they're just scraping by. But she managed to
Mhm.
keep it together.
She had leased to farmers, and they still continue to sell the tar to San Francisco and Los
Right.
Angeles. In fact, Alan got paid $1.50 a day to haul the tar down to Los Angeles railroad station.
That's amazing.
Yeah,
Amazing,
he
amazing.
he really went from rags to riches.
That's
Really,
fabulous.
yeah.
Is there anything in the book that you wish that you had included now that it's already been compiled? Is there going to be a version 2
Well, I
or an
would just
addendum?
I would like to add on to what I've already written, but uh, no, I came across something that was interesting. I mentioned in the book about the camels being used as transport
Right.
at the fort, and it turned out that Alan wanted to uh, have a transportation line between Los Angeles and Utah using the camels,
Right.
and that didn't get into the book, but I thought that was very interesting.
There's some interesting
Mhm.
quotes in here too, and we have to remember that
Mhm.
he was born in 1875
Right.
and he
Yes.
died in
65.
1965,
Yeah.
almost
Mhm.
90 years old. So
Yes.
that spans a huge development growth in Los Angeles
That's right.
and also the growth of Hancock
Mhm.
Park.
Yes.
So tell me, what do you think was the most fascinating Hancock Park achievement for him?
Oh my! I think he enjoyed the trips on the boats. They were called floating hotels. I mean, they had everything but room service.
That was his yacht or
his
his
yachts
ship.
that
He
he
had several
converted
yachts. You're
from
right.
just ocean going vessels to his own private yachts.
Right.
So I think, and that and the music, I think, were the two most gratifying things that he could could do. And of course, he gave acreage to USC, and they turned around and
Right.
sold it to Metropolitan Life Company, and they built Park La Brea. So
Yes.
that was great. And then there was a Hancock Institute of Science down at USC
That's right.
that has the discoveries from the sea trips that he did. They went from up to Alaska down to the Galapagos. And so he had Jacques Cousteau as one of his guests on his ship,
Really?
and trying out a
You didn't mention
bathysphere.
that in the book.
Yeah, I
Did
dropped.
you?
Yeah, I
I must
dropped.
have
You
missed
missed that, Lisa?
I don't know. I was focusing on such tragedies of Bertram, his
Yes.
son,
Yes.
but also Bertram, his uncle.
Mhm.
Wouldn't it have been his uncle?
Yeah.
Ida's second
Mhm.
child
Yes,
passed away.
that's right.
Very tragic at 16 years old.
Yeah, typhoid. In fact, about the same time.
So
So
then
Hancock Park is 101 years old now.
Amazing.
And what's so great about this neighborhood is the way it's kept up. Its ambience, its aesthetics, its just the look, which he pioneered. He was the one that said, we want 50-foot frontage. We want utilities in the back.
Right.
We want beautiful trees along the parkways. he even paid $100,000 to the Los Angeles railway system to get the streetcar to go all the way to La Brea because he wanted to,
Very forward thinking.
yes,
And
yes,
generous, incredibly generous
very generous
for infrastructure. And think about it now. Another thing that I think he mandated was that
Mhm.
the streets in Hancock Park be 5 inches thick concrete.
That's right.
I mean,
Yes.
and a minimum, I think, of $12,000 to be built. That each
Mhm.
house had to be 12, which at that time was a
Yes.
huge amount of money.
And you had to hire licensed architects, and they had to be at least 2 stories.
That's
So
incredible.
that wasn't adhered to in later years,
right.
but at the beginning, that's how it was.
One of the fascinating quotes I think you
Mhm.
have in here is, I think it was in 18, oh no, it was his father in 1885 or
Oh, yes.
75, that
Mhm.
what you said, quote, Los Angeles Times, was probably the precursor to the
Mhm.
Los Angeles Times, was that they wanted to have more infrastructure and that the city council should
Mhm.
be more forward thinking because
That's right.
there could be as many as 300,000 people living in Los Angeles.
That's right. And I think at the time, maybe there was not even 100,000.
I was going to say,
So,
I think at the time he was
or
that
even
quote,
less.
it was something around 2,000.
Yeah.
But by 1915, it was
Mhm.
something like 300. It was like 200,000 or something. It was 500,000. And that was 500,000.
So he
knew what he was.
They called him a visionary.
Yes, a visionary.
But the poor man, he only could find water. He could never find oil. And it wasn't until about 10, 15 years after he died that they did strike oil.
Isn't that
So
that's
so
right?
he had all kinds of ways, like the camels, to try and make money.
Well, when we're talking about G. Allen Hancock, we almost should talk a little bit about his father, Henry, because
Yes,
Henry really was the one who came out here for the gold rush
that's right.
from New
Yes.
Hampshire, I believe,
Yes. Mhm.
and really enabled Ida
Mhm.
to struggle
Yeah.
with her family until they struck oil.
Mhm.
So
Yes.
it's worth reading even about Henry because
Henry. Absolutely, because Henry,
Major Henry.
he was a legislator, and that's where he met Augustine Haratsy and married his daughter, Haratsy's daughter, Ida.
Right.
And Ida, I just give a lot of credit to Ida for
Amazing.
coming. I mean, living
Pioneer.
Yeah, and they came down to Los Angeles after she'd lived in San Francisco in a nice, well-to-do neighborhood and well-to-do family, and came down here to this ranch house next to a pit that smelled of tar.
Oh, honey, join me.
Yeah, right. She had a lot of guts.
And she was about 20 years younger, wasn't
That's
she,
right.
than Henry?
Yes,
Which is
yes, she was
amazing.
And she, when she got the money, she invested in a mansion. Had John Austin, the architect, build her a mansion at Wilshire in Vermont.
And John Austin is famous for
City Hall? No.
It's City Hall and the Los Angeles Observatory.
Oh, that's right.
Yeah.
Of course.
I read
Yes.
your book.
Yeah, I should have.
There are so many facts in here that are they're so amazing. And I've lived here all my life, but I didn't know that Ida's second husband, when she married Judge Ross,
Yes.
he is the reason why Rossmore is named Rossmore.
That's right.
And that's what's so amazing is all the history and why the streets were named. We just think they were random names. No, they weren't. There was a lot of history behind that.
And
so buy the book to find out.
Your great grandfather, C.E. Toberman, sold McCadden the property, and that's how McCadden Place got its name.
There you are.
Yeah.
Yes. He lived until almost till 1983, and he was almost 102. So I even knew him.
Yes.
So that was interesting to see his name mentioned a few times in the book.
He was a pioneer, definitely, in this.
I think anyone who came here before there was electricity was a pioneer in railway cars or anything, because you were at the mercy of the land, basically.
Yeah.
But there was such great development from barley fields and to housing right about 1911. Is it correctly?
Yes.
First was Windsor Square.
Windsor Square was developed, and Wilshire Park. I think Brookside was a little later, but the adjacent neighborhoods, some of them are earlier than Hancock Park. And of course, West Adams was the original chic place for people to live, but that got to be too commercial, and so people wanted a different place. And then with Marlborough School here in 1916, that was a big incentive for people to come.
And weren't there even some houses that were moved from other places closer to this
Yes.
neighborhood?
Yes, there are quite a few.
Tell me a few of those.
Well, there's one at 401 South Rossmore, and that had been on Western Avenue. But again, there too much commercialization going on, so they didn't want to stay there. So they had it moved. And then there's one at Getty, that was Getty property, and that was moved to Rossmore as well. 6th and Rossmore.
That's amazing.
And that's just a few. I'm sure there are many more.
I think there's one at 4th and Lorraine,
Mm-hmm.
what I call the Steppy House. But
Oh, yes, that was moved. And then, of course, the one on Arden, they had a party as they were going down Wilshire Boulevard.
there seemed to be lots of parties when they moved houses,
Yes.
bands, and it was a wonderful event. I wish I had seen that. That would be great.
I do too. I did see the one that went down to Rossmore and 6th. That
Great.
happened at midnight, and they had a empty beer bottle on the 3rd floor ledge. And do you know that never wavered? It was still there when they finished the move.
An engineering feat.
Yes.
Well, now we're going to break for a little music. Thank you. We'll be back.
Well, we are in Yvonne's beautiful garden here at this wonderful Hancock Park home, and we wanted to celebrate one of Hancock Park's great residents, Nat King Cole, who lived here for a long period of time and actually was the first African-American resident of this neighborhood and really broke a lot of barriers in the Los Angeles music scene and all over the country. So this is one of his most famous tunes. This is Love, written by Bert Kepler and Milt Gabler, and written for his 1965 studio album by Capitol Records of the same name. Here is Love. L is for the way you look at me. O is for the only one I see. V is very, very extraordinary. E is even more than anyone that you adore can love. It's all that I can give to you. Love is more than just a game for two. Two in love can make it. Take my heart and please don't break it. Love was made for me and you. L is for the way you look at me. O is for the only one I see. V is very, very extraordinary. E is even more than anyone that you adore can love. It's all that I can give to you. Love is more than just a game for two. Two in love can make it. Take my heart and please don't break it. Love was made for me and you. Oh yes, love was made for me and you. Oh yes, love was made for me and you.
Thank you, Paul. That was Paul Piazza, our musical director, with some wonderful music from Nat King Cole. And by the way, that was one of our local residents here, Nat King Cole. So that's a perfect segue into, tell me about some of the famous people who have lived here, or some of the names.
Well, yes, you're right. Nat King Cole uh, moved to the neighborhood in 1948 with his family, but he was not welcomed. In fact, there was a concerted effort to persuade him not to settle here. At the time, the only African Americans who could live in Hancock Park were servants. However, that was struck down the same year, 1948. So that became history. But Howard Hughes was one of our more famous residents. Mae West, of course, in her all white penthouse at the Ravenswood. John Wayne on Highland, and Harry Warner on Rossmore, and Buster Keaton. So there were quite a few, but not that many, not like today.
Right.
Today we have a lot of celebrities, and I mean, Kathy Bates, Celia Ward, Sean Hayes. Some of them are not here anymore, like Antonio Banderas and Melanie Griffith, but and Patricia Heaton. But they move out and other people come in. And there's a quote in here that I really like, and I wanted to read it to you. I'm
Great.
sure you saw it, but Hancock Park is a mix of old homes, old trees, old money, and perhaps a celebrity next door, making Hancock Park the most attractive California hybrid. Pasadena without the smog, and Beverly Hills without the tour buses. So
It's true. We
yeah.
like to keep low key here, don't
yes,
we?
and I think they come here for privacy. Really, they have, because of tour buses, because of paparazzi. Hopefully, they're not at their doorstep. So, and people in general come here because the location is so great. It's near the freeways.
Right.
It's certainly close to Hollywood. And then you've got downtown and Beverly Hills. So it's really a very convenient location.
So tell me how long, I believe Nat King Cole lived in the neighborhood from 1948 to the early 70s, correct? So it was a long time.
No, I think he died in
But
65.
his widow Maria stayed on for quite a long time.
Yes, she
I
did.
think so.
Yes, and the girls went to Marlboro.
That's right.
Yes.
And although it was a sad situation back at that time with the racial injustice of all of that, I think we've moved on greatly from that point.
Oh,
But we have to remember that time, how difficult that must have been. And yet he persevered and stayed here.
Yes.
And eventually the residents, I believe, began to accept him.
Yes.
And I'm sure there may have been some bribery involved with free tickets to shows. But I think
Possibly.
Natalie,
Yes.
his daughter, Natalie
Mhm.
Cole, is quoted in here as saying she was a little more unaware of all that and just loved living here and had many
Yes.
friends
Yes.
who she said she sold Girl Scout cookies with one of the Ralph's daughters.
That's right.
So it's a
Yes.
broad picture rather than focus just on that negative. I think it was a learning experience for everyone. But I noticed it's interesting when we say about how many actors and actresses lived in the neighborhood that
Yes.
the Los Angeles Tennis Club didn't allow actors to be members, correct?
Or Wilshire Country Club.
Or Wilshire Country Club.
Yes.
Shocking.
Yes. The story is that they wouldn't let Bing Crosby become a member, but they did let Bob Hope become a member because he put down his occupation as philanthropist,
Interesting.
not actor. But LA Tennis Club, I'm sure they had those same rules. However, in the book, I do mention that quite a few movie stars attended the tournaments and even gave out prizes, and so they were welcomed, not necessarily as members, but as people
Right.
in the audience.
But one of the Smothers brothers,
He was the first actor to go
actor?
into Wilshire Country Club. Yes.
That's
Mhm.
that's fascinating.
And,
And the Wilshire Country Club, tell us about how that came to be on the
Well,
land of G.
yeah.
Allen Hancock.
Allen's oil wells were drying up, and so he had a lot of land on his hands. And his friends came to him and said, "Allen, you could use some of that property as a golf course. We really need a golf club." And he thought about, "Oh, fine." And so he leased the property, 105 acres, to the group of friends headed by Thomas Bundy. who later
Oh,
also
okay.
founded the LA Tennis Club. Um, and Alan said, "This is a great place for putting houses all around the golf course."
Ah,
It's
ever the developer.
yes, he was. That was a developer end of his. That's the hat he wore, and it certainly was. Houses on the golf course, as you probably can tell me, go for quite a bit more than houses that aren't on the golf course.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
It's like part of your
Mhm.
backyard to have that.
Yes.
That's-
Oh, yes. It does seem it's lovely.
And the original building was torn down and then rebuilt, the new clubhouse.
Yes. Well,
Is
this
that the
is the
second?
third.
This is the third.
Yeah, third
Okay.
time.
Amazing.
And but it gets lovelier each time they do it. And they just had the ladies professional golf association tournament
It's a big
here
tournament.
last year and the year before. So it gets a lot of
And
usage.
the tennis club used to be the site of the Pacific Southwest tournament.
That's
didn't it?
right.
And
Yes.
and it it had no parking other
No.
than residential streets
Yes.
until very recently.
And many of
small.
the neighbors took in the tennis, the people who participated. I know we had Bjorn Borg and just so many
Jimmy
famous
Connors
names.
and
Yes,
Chris Everett.
that's right.
I remember going there as a
Mhm.
baby when the tournament was still there, and it was just amazing
Mhm.
to have
Yes.
them just walk right past you, and because it's
Yeah.
not a very
Yeah.
big stadium.
No, center court, but it did attract
Billie
a lot
Jean
of
King
names.
was there, I think.
Yeah,
She played there.
Billie
several times.
Jean.
Yeah, that's
Yeah.
amazing.
That's right.
So
Mhm.
tell me about other when
Mhm.
Hancock Park started to grow into a slightly bigger area. When you said it
Mhm.
only had to be 2-story houses, but then
Mhm.
didn't it mushroom over to smaller houses like
Yes,
Lillian Way and
that's right.
Cahuenga?
Mhm. Yes, as you know, Hancock Park is bordered by Melrose to Wilshire, Rossmore to Highland, and he had 13 tracks, which amounted to about 1,100 homes
Wow.
in the neighborhoods. So that's the population. It's a small population, but but very mighty and very dedicated.
I think you're right because
Mhm.
I think because the multiple listing service, the realtors multiple listing calls a greater area Hancock Park, people think that's
Mhm.
all of Hancock Park. So growing up here,
Mhm.
I lived in Windsor Square and
Mhm.
Hancock Park. So it's
Yes.
interesting to me. Those who live here
Mhm.
kind of call the whole area, but there is a definite
Oh,
homeowners association. And
definitely.
tell me about the germination of the homeowners association. When did that start?
Well, it started, I believe, when they wanted to rezone Wilshire Boulevard and allow trucks to come down it and commercial vehicles.
They allowed trucks to come down Wilshire Boulevard. Think about that.
They wanted to. They're going to rezone it so that it would be commercial secondary highway. And the neighbors thought, that's not good. We don't want a lot of traffic, that kind of traffic on. We want to we want this a residential area and we want this. It was very important to them not to let this rezoning go through. So they did fight it. And that was, I think, the genesis of the Hancock Park Homeowners Association, though some people think it was to fight the coming of Nat King Cole, which is, I did not dignified even say that in the book.
Right.
But I give the association so much credit because they have fought for so many things. Well, of course, the freeway coming through Hancock
Yes, there was a
Park.
proposed freeway to come through the neighborhood.
That's right.
Was it the late 60s or the early 70s?
1963, which is
63.
when we started Larchmont Chronicle. That was our first headline. Freeway threatens Hancock Park homes, and that got everybody's attention.
I think for that alone, that civic mindedness
Mhm.
of the whole neighborhood coming up against the freeway, I think
Yes.
generations here are unaware of what a difference that would have made to our neighborhood.
Absolutely.
I think it probably would have really
Yeah.
decimated our neighborhood.
Oh, it would have. And I mean, having all that traffic going through, and then they'd have the side streets and the off ramps going. Oh, it would have been a disaster. And other fights that, taking down the palm trees, some of the palm trees on Highland Avenue. That was another situation that might have happened. And the beautiful light posts that we have, the traditional light posts, they're the original, and they were going to be replaced by Cobra lights. And the
Cobra lights are those freeway lights that are
huge,
horrible.
tall, yeah,
Yeah, they're
very
very
unattractive. And so they pioneered to just increase the wattage of those lights instead of having them.
I
torn
remember
down.
when that
Oh,
that
do
was
you?
proposed, and it
Uh-huh.
wasn't a
Yeah.
choice. The city said you must replace the street
Mhm.
lights. You have a
Yes.
choice of free Cobra
Mhm.
lights, free freeway lights, or you can pay a small amount of money for 10 years. I think it was $100 approximately,
Mhm.
depended on your frontage.
Yes.
But there were people that objected. They didn't want to pay anything.
Yeah, I'm sure there were. Fortunately, there were more people who were willing
Exactly.
to. And then they also put streetlights on the east-west streets, which had
Oh,
never
that's right.
happened before.
That's right.
So, and then of course the tree plantings and the traffic mitigation and the zoning fights. I mean, they're a great group, that association, because they've got a lot of problems to deal with always.
I was going to say, and I think that's unique in our city, that we
Mhm.
have such a strong bond of
Mhm.
neighbors who know each other
Yes.
and are willing to mount a fight against things that will infringe or ruin the the greatness of our
Yeah,
neighborhood. And I mean
yes.
it in a sense of preservation. So
Mhm.
tell us about the HPOZ a little bit.
Well, that wasn't easy, of course, just like the lights. People didn't want to pay for the lights. Well, HBOZ, they didn't have to pay anything, but they certainly didn't want their houses. They wanted to have the freedom to change the look of their houses.
Right.
And that was the anti-HPO, the Historic Preservation Overlay Zone. And they, quite a few people mounted a campaign, and it got a little ugly.
What particular house sort of started the whole HPOZ movement? I was in your book, you mentioned Third and Muirfield,
I'm trying to think what was
the statues.
oh
How many
oh
statues of
yes,
David, life-size statues of
19 life-size statues of David in front of on his front lawn in a semicircle.
in a
Yes.
semicircle along the
Yes.
driveway?
That was one of and he painted his roof, the roof of his garage white. Everything in it was white. And I love the fact that I mentioned in the book, he moved because his house was getting more famous than he was.
I think it even appeared on a show, a TV
Mhm.
show as a mock trial with
Oh.
Leslie Abramson, who lived in the neighborhood at
Oh,
that time,
yes.
against
Mhm.
the fellow who put up all those
Norwood Young.
Norwood put up the
Mhm.
Davids, and
Yes.
there was a mock trial about
Right.
should we have it or not have it. And that's how big of an ordeal this whole
Yes, right. I think it
eyesore
was
was
a
when you watched
national
when you drove.
TV show.
That's right. It made it into
And
national
I'm
news.
sure Norwood loved every minute of it.
He was quite a great promoter. He was-
Yes. And I can remember a friend of mine bought one of his statues when he moved, because he was selling them for $1,000
Oh.
each.
I had no idea. I think
Yes.
one of the neighbors bought one of the
Mhm.
statues and put it in the window across from where he lived, sort
Oh.
of as a memorial. I have to say there was a little bit of sadness when it left, because
Mhm.
I said several people said we were so used to seeing it.
Yeah.
Now it's gone. Now we have
That's
nothing to
right.
talk about anymore.
Right.
But
Fortunately,
but that did, I think, start the whole idea
that was the nail
of
in the coffin.
HPOZ.
Yeah. So that finally came through in 2007. And
2007.
and it does prevent houses from being, messed with.
And do you
changed.
think Hancock Park starting this HPOZ and Windsor Square having an
Mhm.
HPOZ, they actually started, Windsor Square started first, and I think
Yes.
then Hancock
Mhm.
Park they
Yeah.
learned more from what was going on there, how
Mhm.
you could do it.
Yeah.
Don't you think there are more HPOZs that are starting and inspired by Hancock Park and Windsor Square?
Oh, I agree, definitely. And, you see these McMansions going up in these lovely neighborhoods, Larchmont Village neighborhood, Wilshire Park. Well, Wilshire Park has an HPOZ, but just in other neighborhoods, Miracle Mile, they've been fighting it. And the preservation is so important. These houses are one of a kind. I mean, they're just beautifully built.
Yeah.
They're built to last. Many of them don't need air conditioning because the walls are so thick. And, it's just really a great thing that this preservation
I think you're right.
happened.
From a realtor standpoint, I have to tell you a funny story really briefly, is that I remember when the time came that we had to put on our signs
Mhm.
air conditioned, because it
Oh.
was the houses weren't air. That was a unique feature. Now,
I didn't realize
yeah,
that.
now most they have air conditioning, but that was a
Yes.
testament to how well
Mhm.
built these 1920s houses were, with thick
Yes.
walls and
Oh,
old
yeah.
growth wood.
Yeah. Oh, and some of these houses had bowling alleys in the basement, and of course during the 20s when these were being built, it was prohibition, and they had these hideaway bars down in their cellar or somewhere. It
You're
was-
right. You're
Yeah,
right.
it was really, really
I
great.
don't know how many houses have bowling alleys in LA that weren't
Right.
built maybe in the last 10 years, but
Yes.
what an amazing thing to have that.
Right.
And I know who one of those
Mhm.
where one of those houses
Yeah.
is.
Mhm.
So,
Yeah.
well, there's a lot to I want to talk a little bit more about the
Mhm.
house on the golf course. It was Len Hill's house,
Oh, yes.
but do we have time? Do we have Oh, we'd like to break for a moment to go back and listen to Paul Piazza with some more lovely music.
Thank you so much. This is a great conversation. Irving Gordon wrote this 1951 classic for Nat King Cole's breakout album by the same name. This ballad is truly unforgettable with an arrangement by Nelson Riddle. So enjoy 1951 Capitol Records, Unforgettable by Nat King Cole. Unforgettable. That's what you are. Unforgettable. No near or far. Like a song of love that clings to me. How the thought of you does things to me. Never before has someone been more unforgettable in every way and forevermore. That's how you'll stay. That's why, darling, it's incredible that someone so unforgettable thinks that I am unforgettable in every way and forevermore. That's how you'll stay. That's why, darling, it's incredible that someone so unforgettable thinks that I am unforgettable.
Hi, we're back. Thank you, Paul Piazza, for that wonderful music. We're back with Jane Gilman, the author of Inside Hancock Park, a fascinating fact-filled book that everyone in Los Angeles should know and buy and study so that this history doesn't get lost. And
Thank you, Lisa.
yeah,
Thank you for the plug.
and
Definitely.
holidays are coming, makes good gifts. But anyway, we're back, and I wanted to ask you about the architecture and some of the
Mhm.
famous architects. And one of the houses that
Mhm.
fascinates me is one of the oldest houses you
Oh,
mentioned on
yes.
350 North June.
Yes.
Tell me a little bit about that house, because I know there's a film that exists about the actual building of that house.
I'm not surprised. In fact, Lucille Lamb was the owner. Actually, her family, the Meads, built the house, but Lucille was, I think, 20, 21 at the time. And they said, darling, would you like to go back to Europe, or would you like to help design the house that we're going to build on June Street? And Lucille said, oh, not Europe again. I'd love to do the house. So she was very instrumental with the architect named Lester Shearer, and they built what was called the House of the Bells, La Casa de Campañas.
Mhm.
And it has 3 or 4 bedrooms. It's a huge house, but the bedrooms are very large. The wood paneling in the dining room is from the Arthur Letts estate. He was the founder of the Broadway. They have a musician's gallery a balcony rather, in the living room. They have a projection room down in the basement. And then the Hills put in these back stairs and the swimming pool. So, and then the bell tower, for which the house is named, is huge, and it overlooks Wilshire Country Club, as you know.
Yes,
So
fabulous.
that house goes back to, I think it opened in 1929.
And in case people don't know, mention a few of the names for the architects who've built houses in here.
Oh, yes. They're incredible estates. Some of the estates, I'm drawing a blank. The Melanie House, the Valerie Miller House.
Yeah, there's Cole Cord, there's Clement Stiles,
Yes,
Wallace Neff,
yeah.
right, the who's who of architecture in Los
Yeah,
Angeles.
Pierpoint Davis. Who did the Jack Warner House? Harry Warner House. I'm trying to think. Austin.
John Austin. You're right. There's
Who else? Paul Williams.
Paul
How could we forget
I
Paul?
was going to say Paul Williams.
Yes,
One of the most famous architects in Los Angeles.
absolutely.
I think it bears noting how many houses. I think he built many, many houses here. But just
I think he did it.
Tell us a little bit about Paul Williams for those who don't know.
Well, Paul Williams studied under, I think, with John Austin, and he was a black architect. And when he went out on his own, a lot of to put his clients at ease, he would draw the house plans backwards so that he would be facing them, and they wouldn't have to come around to
It's
sit
almost like
next
drawing
to
in a
him.
mirror to
Yeah.
do that. I mean, that's
He
amazing.
was very talented, and he built a huge clientele, many celebrities, and at least a dozen or so homes just in Hancock Park, not to mention Windsor Square and Beverly Hills. And he designed Perino's, the original Perino's restaurant, the Arch restaurant at the airport.
At LAX, which stands
Yes,
today.
That's right. And I think the Beverly Hills Hotel, I'm not sure, but he was an amazing architect. And I think if you had your house designed by Paul Williams, you were really up there with the very special elite.
And I heard that even though he couldn't live here, he designed so many houses, and to get an edge on other architects, because as a black man at that time, to be hired would be so much more difficult. I heard he would take the plans or the designs that the owners were thinking of, and to compete, he would go home and get them all done in one day.
Oh,
he just would stay up all night, where
Oh.
others took a week or 2 weeks
Yes, yes.
to prove his worth. But today, when you
Mhm.
walk into a Paul Williams house, you know it's a Paul Williams
Williams
house. He had just
that's right.
amazing arches and
Mhm.
design details that were really
Yes.
unique.
And I think his Monterey style, I think, is probably his signature style. But he's done Tudor, he's done Mediterranean. He's done a whole gamut. But I think that Monterey with the upstairs balcony.
It's just iconic.
Mhm.
Absolutely.
Yes.
So I'm going to put you on the spot for a minute and say, since we're in near Hollywood,
Yes.
what is the most sort of dramatic thing that's happened with anyone relating to Hollywood here in the neighborhood? I mean, there's a lot of dramatic history in here about supposed liaisons and deaths and
Yes.
accidental murders.
Oh, that's right. Yes, yes.
Accidental
Russ
murders.
Columbo. Yeah. What is the most? Yes, you did put me on the spot.
Okay, maybe this is history we don't need to dwell on, I guess.
It's just that Hollywood was very much a part of people who lived here. They were producers, directors, writers, cameramen. I mean, a lot of people. The convenience of living here and being
Right.
able to.
You mentioned someone on Lillian Way who
Mhm.
was
Yes.
accidentally shot.
Yes, that was Russ Columbo.
Russ Columbo.
Supposedly accidentally shot.
Supposedly,
Someone.
accidentally, maybe. So even though it's a beautiful neighborhood, there is a little bit of an undercurrent of mystery and intrigue.
Definitely, and a lot of Peyton Place. Well, nobody will know what Peyton Place is, but that was a TV series with a lot of intrigue and people swapping swapping wives or swapping husbands.
Which brings us to filming.
Mhm. Yes.
There's a lot of filming here in this neighborhood. Some people are against it, some people are for it, but
Yes.
it does happen. And mention some of the shows or movies that have been filmed here in Hancock Park.
Oh yes. Well, just down the street, Whatever Happened to Baby Jane, that was filmed there. L.A.
Confidential, LA Confidential.
Confidential
That's right.
on Wilcox. A TV series, John Burroughs School, was the setting for Welcome Back, Kotter, I think it was. Flashdance.
The Ring was filmed, I think, on
Mhm.
McCadden, maybe.
Yeah.
So,
Mhm.
yeah, you mentioned that in your book,
Yes.
and it continues to this day. There's
It's
lots
good. It's good, healthy income for Hollywood, the people that are involved with the film, and Hancock Park homeowners has very good guidelines so that they don't infringe, don't park in front of people's driveways,
right.
have to quit at a certain hour, have a policeman, off-duty policeman, to direct traffic. Yeah, so they try to make it convenient.
Well, there's a wonderful quote by Jack Smith, who
Yes.
is no longer with us, but he was a columnist for the LA Times for years, and he basically mentioned about how civic minded, what a
Mhm.
great neighborhood this was. But we want to thank you for spending this time and telling us about your book. It's just been, we could go on and on, on and on and on, but we have to wrap it up.
All
So
right.
if there's one final thing you'd like to say.
I'd like to say thank you to Lisa Hutchins, to John Lockhart, to Paul Piazza, and Yvonne Kazir.
Exactly. Our host is 4 on 4 Forum.
Yes.
And we're going to go to Paul for some more lovely music. Thank you.
Jane and Lisa, this was an incredible conversation. And for those of you at home, you won't know that we're actually only about 15 yards away from each other that way. So I'm going to look over there. Thank you for such a fantastic conversation. And Jane, what a wonderful book. Thank you so much for sharing. Makes me excited to learn more about my own neighborhood. We've got one more tune. This was not written for Nat King Cole. This comes from the 1956 musical My Fair Lady. But if you are a big fan of Nat King Cole, you know that he did an album of all music from the musical. But before we get to our final tune for the day, we are getting into the holiday season. So first of all, we want to wish you a very happy Thanksgiving next week as we take a break from 4 at 4. And if your company, if your family, if your organization is hosting holiday parties at a distance, if they are being a hybrid with a combination of live entertainment and live gatherings with online gatherings, we would love to help make that happen. So if you are planning on putting events like that together for your organization, please contact us at peoplemedia.live, and there you can also find information about all of our upcoming programs. So we hope to see you on all of our future weeks at 4 at 4 Forums, and here is On the Street Where You Live. I've often walked down the street before, but the pavement always stayed beneath my feet before. All at once am I several stories high, knowing I'm on the street where you live. Are there lilac trees in the heart of town? Can you hear a lark in any other part of town? Does enchantment pour out of every door? No, it's just on the street where you live. And know the towering feeling, just to know somehow you are near. The overpowering feeling that any second you may suddenly appear. People stop and stare, they don't bother me, for there's nowhere else on earth that I would rather be. Let the time go by, I won't care if I can be here on the street where you live. People stop and stare, they don't bother me, for there's nowhere else on earth that I would rather be. Let the time go by, I won't care if I can be here on the street where you live. I won't care if I can be here on the street where you live. I lost my place, but hopefully no one's listening to this part. Let me be on the street where you live. Let me be on the street where you live. Landed that plane. Thank you so much, everybody. Have a good night.